Today, Asher and I are going to be putting together a charcuterie and cheese board to show the viewers how to pair correctly cheeses and meats for presentation as well as enjoyment. So what Asher is doing right now is he actually has some duck prosciutto, and if it looks as fantastically oily as it is, that's the way it should be, because duck prosciutto has a much higher content of fat due to the fact that it's a waterfowl. So it's got that really nice texture, consistency of drier meat and that rich oil. He's also pairing it with a made in-house jam that we do here. It's a blackberry and thyme preserve. So you're gonna get that really, really nice, almost acidic sweetness with that fat underneath of the duck, and those two will just be beautiful together. A cheese that I would recommend that we put on there, and I think Asher's going to do that, is a Spanish cheese called Mahone. It is a cow's milk cousin to a manchego. It is washed and aged in paprika on the outside, so the rind is edible. And so you have that nice waxy, almost dry-like texture that will pair really beautifully with the duck and that preserve. So he's setting this up, and that looks stunning. Mochetta is a unique meat in that it is actually all beef. So if you have guests who are of certain religious persuasions and they can't have any pork, mochetta is an excellent dried salumi to put on a board, and where it's a little bit more approachable for all guests and dietary needs. It has a beefy, almost chewy texture, but when you place it this thin on your tongue, it just melts. And it looks like he's pairing that with another made in-house concoction that we have here that actually Asher makes all of these. They're his recipes. And this is a basil and Marcona almond pesto. It's nice because it has a little bit of that crunchy chunkiness to it. So when you pair it all together, if you were going to do fresh bread versus crackers, you'll get some texture in there with it as well. Now the next cheese we're moving on to is Midnight Moon. This is an aged goat's Gouda from Northern California. It's by a creamery called Cypress Grove. They are very, very, very well known for another cheese they make called Humboldt Fog. And this is, it's definitely growing in reputation. I would say not necessarily lesser known, but it is growing in fame. The Midnight Moon is one of my top 10 for sure. It has that goat flavor, but a super, super smooth paste of a Gouda, and is, oh my goodness, has a little bit of those tyrosine crystals, which is a long chain amino acid that forms in the cheese throughout the aging process and gives it that crunch, that texture inside the cheese. So this particular cheese has that in it, and when paired with more Marcona almonds, and that was California wildflower honey he's drizzled on the side, you're gonna get that really smooth, slightly nutty flavor from the goat's milk and the Gouda textures with that gorgeous presentation of the Marcona almonds. So that's a really nice blend of flavors there. And that will also pair with pretty much anything we're gonna put on this plate. Next, we're moving on to speck. Asher is making looks like some little rolls of speck. Speck is a prosciutto that is smoked. So it has a not chewier, but a little bit more dense flavor when eaten and paired with anything. So, and it has a nice smoky undertone. So this would also pair really well with the blackberry preserve, because that acid and that sweetness with the smoky note up top is going to really just flatter the palate. And as far as accoutrements and pairings, we're doing, that's a whole grain French Dijon mustard that if you like to go sweet versus savory on some of these items, you can. The smokiness and that tart Dijon is an absolute match made in heaven. So you can pair that speck, the Mahone, and the Dijon, like that straight line across the board, and that would be spectacular. Now, what we have here is fromage dauphinois. This is a double cream French brie. It's double cream technically, but it toes the line as it's only 1% off from being your classic triple cream brie. It is very buttery, very rich flavored, and Asher just put a little bit of our strawberry, sage, and tarragon preserve to pair with that as well. So he decided to go sweet with this pairing. This is one of those cheeses that I always say it's almost like vanilla ice cream. You can make it go savory or sweet. It's a blank palate. So with that, Asher also just put on the plate some lightly pickled that we do in-house with herbes de Provence, red onion chutney. And that, it's sweet and tart, but it has the herbes de Provence, so there's some richness of flavor underneath the palate, so you can pair that with any of the meats. Next, Asher is putting on a traditional gift from Spain, the jamón serrano. This is cut, I like to have this cut the way it is on this plate, which is just a little bit thicker. Traditionally, prosciutto is cut very, very thin so that you get the marbling of the fats throughout the flavor. I like to have this cut a little bit thicker because I feel the fats lend itself to a more generous portion. So, and it looks like he's done the onion chutney with the jamón serrano. And next, we're moving into sorpresa. Sorpresa is this one is actually by a company called Creminelli. They are based in San Francisco. Sorpresa has beautiful characteristic notes of like white wine and black pepper. This particular one has a lot more marbling of the fats. So you have that chewiness. And the way this is cut is nice and thin so that you get that full rounded flavor. So this has that really beautiful, slightly peppery note underneath, which would pair incredibly beautifully with our fromage dauphinois. Looks like he's adding just a little bit more of the the basil and Marcona tapenade to highlight the floral presentation. So this is an absolutely perfect variation of what a cheese board for, I would say this would feed anywhere between 8 and 10. Yeah, 8 and 10 people. The general rule for pairings when you're coming up with how much do I serve my people, the average party goer will eat 2 ounces of cheese and about 1 to 2 ounces of meat. So you kind of work that in, and that's average. So whenever you have someone that's maybe a vegetarian or they don't particularly care for one type of cheese versus another, you will have that nice average number. So if you have 20 people, then you would want 40 ounces of cheese and go from there. And if there's a little left over, I've never heard anyone complain about that.